what happens if China moves further into our borders, takes over more Indian territory? Will the world come to India's aid? You can't depend on Russia, who will probably cut off arms supplies at that stage. Where does that leave India? Because that's, I think, the nightmare scenario for everyone here.
Well, look at how Zelensky has handled it, if you want a sense of why it has worked. I think one of the most extraordinary aspects of this conflict, by the way, has been the degree to which it has revealed a kind of new world that we live in. A world in which everyone is wired, everyone has a cell phone, and so the world is really seeing this Russian invasion of Ukraine largely through Ukrainian eyes, because the Ukrainians are, middle-income country. Everybody has a cell phone, everybody has a story to tell, and they have at the helm a brilliant political strategist, at least at the level of communication. I mean, think about what Zelensky has done, right? He's used the power of media to address live the United States Congress, the British Parliament, the German Bundestag, the Japanese Parliament, and to each one, by the way, he has a different message. Yeah. He says to the Americans, you are the world leader, how can you let this happen? To the British, he says, we are like you were in 1941. We are all alone. I am like Churchill, I need your help. To the German Bundestag, he says, you should be ashamed of yourself for buying gas from the Russians. To the Japanese, he says, they are attacking Chernobyl and you're going to get another Fukushima on a global stage. So he's pressing the button of each country and each national culture in a brilliant way. And this has mobilized people, but his central message is, we are a free democratic people. We want to be part of the free democratic world. Please help us, right? We are dying for you because we all have the same cause. He was on my show for the entire show 2 weeks ago, and he said, the only message I have for you is, we are dying for you. We are dying for the freedoms you believe in. When are you going to help us, right? India needs to, in order to get the kind of response Zelensky is getting, India needs to decide, where does it stand on some of these issues? Where does it stand on the strategic divide? Where does it stand in terms of the issue of being part of the open world, the free world, or the increasingly authoritarian cabal that Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela to a certain extent represent? And again, I think Indian society has a very clear answer to that, but I don't think New Delhi does.
I'm talking about fears of people in this room. Here's our other fear. You have on your western border Pakistan, which is a hostile neighbor, and you make it more hostile by raising the temperature every time you need something domestically for political gains. On your eastern side, you have China, which is probably going to be the next big, great superpower. And when you have a problem with two hostile neighbors and you look at the rest of the world, are you going to go to America, who when Ukraine happened asked you to help and you said, well, listen, this is not our fight, we're not getting involved? Where does that leave us?
It's an even broader question than what you're asking, Veer, because I think India needs to get serious about foreign policy. It is still relegated to a kind of, it's still largely relegated to a kind of subordinate issue. I've been struck by the transformation that I've seen in the time that I've been in the United States between Chinese diplomats on the one hand and Indian diplomats on the other. Indian diplomats at the very highest level, even not at the stratospheric level of Shashi Tharoor, but even at the more, the kind of sub-stratospheric range, are very, very good. But what I've been struck by is the Chinese utterly transformed their diplomatic service so that 30 years ago, you used to meet incompetent socialist bureaucrats who knew very little about the world, basically spoke Chinese, didn't know how to interact with you. Now, these people are smart, they are sharp, they are media savvy. The ones that need to speak English, the ones that need to speak French or German speak it. And there are many of them. I believe the number is per capita, China has 5 times as many diplomats as India does. 5 times as many per capita, not just because they are larger. If you go to the WTO headquarters and you look at the size of the Chinese delegation there, I believe it is larger than the actual secretariat of the WTO itself. And so when people say China cheats on trade, it's actually not true. The Chinese game world trade brilliantly. They have studied it, they have mastered it. Everything they do, they have exploited some loophole. They have a theoretical rationale for it. They argue their cases effectively. India largely just sits back. And there needs to be a much more forward-leaning effort to try and figure out how do we take advantage of these opportunities? How do because India has to hustle on the world stage. And you don't get that feeling. You get the feeling of an inwardly, and sometimes I think of India as kind of the Ottoman Empire, sitting around, lots of diversity, turmoil internally, and entirely obsessed with that, not noticing that there's a world out there which is actually having a big impact on it. And by the way, the story doesn't end so well for the Ottoman Empire.
ये है ideas of India.